On the cold morning of November 29, 1970, a chilling discovery was made in a remote area of Norway's Isdalen Valley. The body of an unidentified woman was found partially burned, with her clothing and belongings scattered around her in a way that suggested an attempt to destroy evidence. This mysterious and gruesome case would go on to captivate the world, and for decades, the identity of the Isdal Woman has remained a haunting enigma. The Isdal Woman's body was found in a secluded spot near Bergen, Norway, by two hikers who had ventured into the area for a walk. They initially thought they had stumbled upon a tragic scene involving someone who had died in a fire, but as they got closer, they realized that the woman's body was far more unusual than they could have imagined. Her face was charred beyond recognition, and her clothes had been burned, but not completely. The odd thing was that there were no obvious signs of trauma, and there was no immediate indication of how she had died. In the days that followed, the police and investigators began to examine the area around the woman's body for clues. They found several unusual items scattered around her, including a passport with a false name, an identity card with no clear connection to her, and a bag filled with other personal items that raised even more questions. The Isdal Woman had taken deliberate steps to erase her identity. She had gone to great lengths to obscure the truth about who she was, and the more investigators dug, the more complicated the case became. What was even more perplexing was the discovery of her burnt clothing. It appeared as though someone had gone to great lengths to destroy the evidence, but they had been unsuccessful in fully erasing the woman's identity. The clothing, which was a mix of expensive brands and unmarked, ordinary pieces, added to the confusion. Investigators found no indication that the woman had been part of any known criminal activity, and yet, the way her body had been treated and left behind pointed to something far more sinister. The identity of the Isdal Woman remained elusive for many years. Authorities initially thought she might be a foreigner who had died under suspicious circumstances, possibly related to espionage or criminal activity. Her body was sent for autopsy, but the cause of death was not immediately clear. It was determined that she had died of carbon monoxide poisoning, likely due to inhaling smoke from the fire. However, the circumstances surrounding her death, how she ended up in that remote location, why she had been burned, and who had been responsible, remained completely unanswered. In the years that followed, the investigation into the Isdal Woman's death was expanded. Police began to look into her possible connections to various foreign intelligence agencies, as well as to a mysterious network of spies and operatives that seemed to be active in Norway and other parts of Europe at the time. Some suggested that the Isdal Woman could have been involved in espionage, working as a secret agent for a foreign government. This theory was further fueled by the fact that the woman's movements before her death seemed to have been carefully planned. She had stayed in a number of hotels in Norway, using different false names and identities at each location. Her actions appeared deliberate, and investigators began to suspect that she had been on a mission of some sort, one that ended in her death. The idea of espionage was further supported by some of the information that had been uncovered during the investigation. The Isdal Woman had been seen on several occasions in the company of men who were described as foreign by hotel employees. Witnesses reported that the woman had behaved strangely at times, and her interactions with others were often secretive. She seemed to be constantly changing her identity, using multiple passports and false names. This was all very unusual behavior for a tourist, and it led investigators to believe that she may have been involved in something far more dangerous than a simple vacation. As the case developed, investigators discovered that the Isdal Woman had been in contact with several individuals who were suspected of being spies or members of various intelligence agencies. Some of these individuals had been seen with the woman in the months leading up to her death, and it seemed likely that they had played a role in her mysterious activities. However, the investigation into these connections was hindered by the fact that many of the people involved were either unknown or untraceable. The complexity of the case deepened when investigators turned their attention to the woman's belongings. Among the items found near her body were several pieces of clothing with no labels or markings, a strange assortment of documents, and a number of photographs that seemed to be of a woman who bore no resemblance to the Isdal Woman. These photographs raised more questions than answers, suggesting that the Isdal Woman might not have been who she appeared to be. One of the most puzzling aspects of the case was the complete lack of witnesses. No one had seen the Isdal Woman in the days leading up to her death, and no one had reported hearing anything unusual in the area where she was found. The location of her body, the remote and isolated Isdalen Valley, only added to the mystery. Why had the woman been left there? And why had she gone to such lengths to hide her true identity? As the investigation continued, new theories began to emerge. Some suggested that the Isdal Woman had been involved in a botched espionage operation, and that her death was the result of a failed mission. Others speculated that she had been the victim of a criminal gang or a foreign intelligence agency that had turned on her. But despite the many theories, no one could provide a definitive answer. Theories about the Isdal woman's true identity and the cause of her death continued to circulate, but the investigation remained at a standstill. New forensic evidence, including re-examinations of the photographs and documents, provided some insight, but they failed to solve the case. The Isdal woman's death, much like her life, remained shrouded in mystery, and the case became one of Norway's most infamous unsolved cold cases. As the investigation into the Isdal woman's mysterious death continued, the police began to examine every angle of the case. The more they dug into her life and movements, the more perplexing the situation became. Investigators discovered that the Isdal woman had been traveling across Europe in the months before her death, staying at hotels and using multiple identities. She had arrived in Norway several weeks before her death, and authorities traced her steps across the country, but each lead only deepened the mystery. The initial breakthrough in the case came when investigators learned that the Isdal woman had checked into several hotels under different names. At least 8 hotels had records of her staying in their rooms, always using aliases and paying in cash. The aliases were often European-sounding names, though there was no consistency in the countries she claimed to be from. It was as though she was deliberately trying to leave no trace of her true identity. The lack of solid personal information led investigators to believe that she might have been hiding from someone or something. It was clear that she had been very deliberate in concealing her true self. She seemed to be constantly moving, never staying in one place for long. This raised a chilling possibility: was the Isdal woman in hiding? Was she on the run from something or someone? And if so, who or what was she trying to escape? As investigators examined the documents found near her body, more inconsistencies arose. There were several pages of notes that appeared to be in a foreign language, but no one could immediately identify the script. It seemed as though the Isdal woman was involved in something far deeper than the police had initially imagined. Could she have been connected to espionage or intelligence work, as some of the early theories suggested? One of the most significant pieces of evidence that investigators uncovered was a series of photographs that the Isdal woman had kept hidden in her belongings. The photos, which depicted a woman with a distinct look, were puzzling because they did not match the Isdal woman's appearance. The woman in the photographs was younger, and her facial features were quite different. Some investigators suggested that the Isdal woman might have been using these photographs as a form of identity theft, or perhaps they were part of a larger cover-up. The possibility that the Isdal woman was involved in espionage was further explored when authorities began to uncover connections between her and foreign intelligence agencies. There were rumors that the woman had been seen meeting with individuals who had ties to various countries' spy organizations. This theory gained momentum when it was discovered that the Isdal woman had spent time in several European cities, all known to be hubs for intelligence operations during the Cold War era. Could she have been a foreign agent who had been caught up in a deadly operation gone wrong? One theory that gained traction in the months following the discovery of the Isdal woman's body was that she was a spy for the Soviet Union, operating within Norway's borders during a time of heightened Cold War tensions. The idea that she had been an undercover agent trying to infiltrate Western Europe fit with many of the details discovered about her movements and her mysterious death. But again, this theory lacked any concrete proof, and it was dismissed by some investigators as pure speculation. Despite the growing theories about espionage, the investigation took another turn when new evidence suggested that the Isdal woman's death could have been connected to criminal activity. There were reports from some of the hotels where she had stayed that she had interacted with men who were later identified as involved in criminal activities. Could the Isdal woman have been an innocent bystander caught up in a dangerous world of organized crime? Or could she have been targeted by criminals for reasons unknown? Another avenue of investigation involved the strange circumstances of her death. The Isdal woman's body had been found in a remote and difficult-to-reach area of Isdalen Valley, far from any major roads or towns. The location of the body raised several questions. Why had she been left in such a secluded spot? Was she familiar with the area, or had the killer been familiar with the terrain? The fact that her body had been carefully positioned and her clothing partially burned led investigators to believe that the killer might have been trying to erase any traces of their identity. The scene where the body was found was also puzzling because there were no signs of struggle or resistance. The Isdal woman's body appeared to have been placed in the location intentionally, suggesting that her killer had carefully planned the murder. Was the killer someone who had known the woman, or had they simply been in the right place at the right time? The mystery deepened as the police continued to search for any clues that might lead to the killer's identity. In the years following the murder, the case grew colder, and many leads fizzled out. The investigation became one of Norway's most enduring cold cases, with new generations of investigators revisiting the mystery from time to time. However, despite the renewed interest, no definitive breakthrough was ever made. The identity of the Isdal woman remained unknown, and the question of who killed her, and why, remained just as elusive as it had been in 1970. The Isdal woman's case is one that continues to intrigue and haunt both investigators and the public. Despite all the theories and speculation, the case remains unsolved, and the identity of the woman who was found burned and abandoned in a valley continues to be a mystery. Was she a victim of espionage, a tragic accident, or something more sinister? Theories about her life and death continue to circulate, but the truth may never be known. To this day, the Isdal woman's identity remains a haunting enigma, and the mystery of her death continues to fascinate those who have been captivated by this chilling case. The investigation into her murder may have stalled, but the questions about who she was and why she died remain unanswered. The Isdal woman's legacy is one of mystery, intrigue, and a chilling reminder of the dark forces that can shape lives and end them without explanation. As the years passed and the investigation into the Isdal woman's death remained unsolved, new theories began to surface, adding complexity to the case. Although the idea of espionage had been one of the most widely discussed explanations, new leads suggested that the Isdal woman's death might be linked to a much more personal and sinister motive. The theories surrounding her identity and her murder continued to evolve, and with each new piece of information, the case grew more perplexing. In the 1980s, a new lead in the investigation emerged when a local man named Tor Ulven, who had been investigating the case for years, came forward with new information about the Isdal woman's time in Bergen, where she had stayed in several hotels prior to her death. Ulven's research into the case suggested that the Isdal woman had been seen interacting with a mysterious group of men while staying at one of the hotels. These men were described as having Eastern European accents and appearing to be part of a larger network of individuals engaged in illegal activities. Ulven's findings raised suspicions that the Isdal woman might have been an undercover operative or part of a network of criminals involved in espionage. The theory gained further momentum when investigators discovered that the Isdal woman had been seen multiple times in the company of people who were connected to intelligence agencies or organized crime. Though the evidence was circumstantial, the idea that she had been involved in secretive or dangerous work seemed to align with many of the details surrounding her death. As investigators delved deeper into the possibility that the Isdal woman was a foreign spy, new questions began to surface about her motives. Was she a willing participant in espionage, or was she a victim of a larger scheme? Some theorists speculated that she had been recruited by a foreign government to gather intelligence on Norwegian activities, only to be caught up in something that spiraled out of control. If she had been a spy, had she become a liability, or was she simply in the wrong place at the wrong time? The idea that the Isdal woman might have been a spy was not the only theory to emerge, however. In the 1990s, a new perspective began to take shape, one that suggested that the Isdal woman's death might have been the result of a personal vendetta. This theory argued that the murder was not a politically motivated crime but rather one rooted in personal hatred or revenge. Some suggested that the Isdal woman had been involved in a love triangle or that she had betrayed someone close to her. According to this theory, the murder was an act of passion, driven by personal conflict rather than espionage or criminal activity. The emotional component of this theory was particularly compelling, as it humanized the Isdal woman. Instead of being seen as a faceless victim of international intrigue, she became someone whose death was a result of a deeply personal, tragic event. The idea of a love affair gone wrong or a betrayal leading to murder struck a chord with many who were investigating the case, and it added a layer of complexity to the investigation that had not been considered before. However, there was still no concrete evidence to support either theory, and the lack of definitive leads continued to frustrate investigators. In 2002, the case took another dramatic turn when forensic experts re-examined the Isdal woman's body using advanced technology. One of the most important findings was that the Isdal woman's remains had been subjected to unusual treatment, suggesting that she had been deliberately altered after her death. Her body had been burned in a way that made it appear as if she had been trying to erase her identity completely. The physical evidence suggested that the killer had been methodical and deliberate, taking extreme measures to prevent the victim from being identified. The investigation into the Isdal woman's case became even more complex as these new findings were taken into account. The forensic analysis of her remains raised troubling questions about who could have been capable of such a calculated act. Was the killer someone with intimate knowledge of the Isdal woman, or was this a crime carried out by a stranger who had planned the murder carefully in advance? The meticulous nature of the crime pointed to a killer who was highly organized and had a deep understanding of how to cover their tracks. In the years that followed, various theories about the Isdal woman's identity continued to circulate. Some suggested that she had been a victim of a foreign government that had seen her as a threat, while others believed that she had been a participant in a criminal organization that had turned on her. Despite the growing number of theories, the case continued to stall. Investigators were unable to find any new evidence that could lead to the killer's identity, and the Isdal woman's mysterious death remained one of Norway's most infamous cold cases. The impact of the Isdal woman's murder on the people who had been involved in the investigation was significant. For the detectives and forensic experts who had worked tirelessly on the case, the lack of answers was deeply frustrating. They had invested years of their lives trying to solve the mystery, and the uncertainty weighed heavily on them. For the people of Bergen, the Isdal woman's death represented a dark and unresolved chapter in their town's history. The murder had become part of the local folklore, a mystery that seemed to haunt the town, leaving questions without answers. As the case entered the 21st century, renewed interest in cold cases and advancements in forensic technology brought new hope. In 2016, new DNA testing methods were applied to the evidence found at the scene, and investigators began to revisit the case with fresh eyes. With modern forensic techniques, it was hoped that new breakthroughs might be made. However, after years of investigation, no new suspects were identified, and the Isdal woman's true identity remained a mystery. Her case continues to captivate people around the world, with documentaries, books, and podcasts dedicated to unraveling the enigma surrounding her death. While the investigation has never yielded any conclusive answers, the mystery of the Isdal woman remains one of the most perplexing and chilling cold cases in the history of crime. Could the Isdal woman have been a victim of espionage, or was she involved in something far darker? Theories continue to swirl, but the truth about her death remains buried, just like her true identity. As the years continued to pass and the Isdal woman's murder remained unsolved, the case began to take on an almost mythical quality. Despite new forensic methods, renewed investigations, and the passage of time, the identity of the Isdal woman and the details of her death remained elusive. For the people of Bergen and the investigators who had worked on the case, it was a haunting reminder that some mysteries simply cannot be solved. The ongoing investigation into the Isdal woman's death had taken many unexpected turns, from the theory that she was a spy involved in espionage, to the more personal theory suggesting that her death was the result of a vendetta. As investigators re-examined her belongings and the details of her last days, they found that she had been a woman of mystery in life, as well as in death. She had clearly gone to great lengths to conceal her true identity, and her movements were deliberate, suggesting that her life was entangled in something far darker than anyone had imagined. The case began to be examined in the context of other mysterious deaths that had occurred around the same time. Could there be a connection between the Isdal woman and other unsolved cases in Europe? Could she have been part of a wider network of spies, criminals, or people involved in clandestine activities that spanned multiple countries? These questions loomed large in the minds of those following the case. The idea that the Isdal woman was a victim of international intrigue or criminal networks seemed plausible, but it was hard to pinpoint exactly how everything connected. Yet, despite the wide range of theories, the case remained unsolved. The question that persisted in the minds of investigators was simple: why did the Isdal woman go to such lengths to conceal her identity? What happened in the last days of her life that led her to that remote spot in Isdalen Valley? Was she a victim of international espionage, or was she involved in something more personal? Theories continued to abound, but the answers remained frustratingly out of reach. Some believed that she had been a target of foreign intelligence agencies who viewed her as a liability. Others speculated that she had been part of a criminal syndicate, and her death was a result of a betrayal. While each theory had its merits, none could provide conclusive evidence to solve the case. Despite the frustration and confusion, there was still hope that new advancements in technology or forensic techniques could eventually unlock the mystery. As DNA testing continued to evolve, the possibility that modern science could provide new insights remained a glimmer of hope for those dedicated to solving the case. However, as time passed, it became increasingly likely that the truth would never be fully uncovered. For the people of Bergen, the Isdal woman's death was a ghost that haunted the town, a mystery that had not been solved and perhaps never would be. The case had left an indelible mark on the community, and the questions surrounding her death still lingered in the minds of many. The mystery of the Isdal woman had become a part of local folklore, with new generations growing up hearing the story of the woman found dead in Isdalen Valley. For those who were directly involved in the investigation, the emotional toll of the case was significant. Years of dead ends, conflicting theories, and public pressure had worn down the resolve of many investigators. The case became a symbol of the frustration and complexity of unsolved mysteries, and it took on a life of its own. The uncertainty surrounding the Isdal woman's identity, the chilling nature of her death, and the apparent failure to uncover the truth had a profound effect on those who had worked on the case. Despite the lack of a resolution, the Isdal woman's story has continued to resonate. Books, documentaries, and podcasts have kept the case alive in the public imagination, and the theories about her life and death continue to captivate those fascinated by unsolved mysteries. The fact that her death remains unexplained only adds to the intrigue, making it one of the most enduring and haunting cold cases in modern history. In the years since the case first emerged, the Isdal woman has become more than just a victim of a gruesome crime. She has become a symbol of the many unsolved mysteries that remain in the world, of the cases that refuse to be neatly closed, and of the unanswered questions that continue to haunt investigators, families, and communities. The Isdal woman may never be fully identified, and her killer may never face justice. But her case will never be forgotten. As long as there are people who are fascinated by the unknown, the mystery of the Isdal woman will continue to live on, a chilling reminder of how easily secrets can be hidden and how elusive the truth can be. The investigation into the Isdal woman's death may have stagnated, but the search for answers continues. The case is a testament to the power of mystery, to the human desire to uncover the truth, and to the persistence of those who refuse to give up. And, perhaps one day, new evidence will surface, and the haunting mystery of the Isdal woman will finally be solved. Until then, the case remains open, the questions linger, and the story of the Isdal woman continues to captivate the imagination of all those who are drawn into it.